Three high-profile cases are back on our burden of proof docket this week. A Texas judge deciding yesterday Carmelo Anthony will not get a new trial. The 19-year-old was convicted of stabbing another teen to death during a track meet last year. Meanwhile, closing arguments are expected this week in the murder trial of Lindsay Clancy, the Massachusetts mother charged with killing her three young children. She's pleaded not guilty, and her lawyers arguing she suffered from postpartum psychosis. And the trial for the only man charged in the 1996 killing of rapper Tupac Shakur starts its second week tomorrow. Defendant Dwayne "Keefe D. Davis, facing tough questions on the stand last week. He's also pleaded not guilty. ABC News legal expert Bernarda Villalona is here with me now for a look ahead at all three of these cases. Long week ahead of us. Lots of stuff to talk about, obviously. I want to start with the Carmelo Anthony trial. So the judge that presided over this case originally, he's been removed from this case for calls of impartiality. Do you think that weighed in on the court's decision yesterday at all?
No, not at all, because the judge that heard this, who presided over this hearing, of course, is not the judge who heard the trial itself. So in terms of this judge is of equal jurisdiction as the judge that was listening to the trial. So this judge heard different issues and ultimately made a decision where the decision was like, I'm denying the hearing. That's it. I wasn't surprised because, number one, he's a judge of the same jurisdiction. But two, really, I think you have a better chance when you appeal it to the appellate court. But the great thing about this new defense team going forward with this hearing is that we got to find out about this gentleman's agreement, about what of it even existing and what were the terms of it. Because now there's testimony before this judge and for the appellate record to be able to review as to this gentleman's agreement. But what I'm looking forward to is that ultimately when they appeal this case to the appellate court, I think what this defense team needs to do is also allege a count of ineffective assistance of counsel, because there were so many errors done by prior counsel, including the most egregious one, which is this gentleman's agreement, entering into it and then not knowing the actual terms, instead of actually putting the agreement or whatever you agree to on the record and letting a judge decide, because what a judge decides is one that can be appealed and heard by an appellate court.
Yeah, there was just so much information there that the jury couldn't even look into.
It was too much, and to understand that based on this agreement, literally it kept Carmelo Anthony off the stand, which normally is not an issue when you're talking about, because you rarely put a defendant on the stand to testify. But when you're talking about self-defense, who is in a better position to tell a jury why they took the actions that they did, why they feared for their life, why they had to use deadly force, what was immediate said before you actually use that force, but the defendant. And that's exactly what the jury needs to hear in order to make a determination when it comes to self-defense or justification. And he was not allowed to do that. Well, prevented from doing that based on these decisions.
Exactly. Moving on to the Lindsay Clancy trial, the prosecutor tonight, right now, they're calling on rebuttal witnesses before both the prosecution and the defense make their closing arguments. So why do you think they're calling up these rebuttal witnesses? What is it that they have to prove to the jury beyond a reasonable doubt here?
Well, in this Lindsay Clancy case, you have to think because the defense has brought up the defense that Lindsay Clancy was suffering under a postpartum psychosis and wasn't able to form the criminal intent or be aware of her actions or conform her actions or conduct to the rule of law. Now the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she was able to conform her actions, that she was aware of what was going on, as opposed to what the defense is saying is that she was like a puppet because she was listening to these auditory hallucinations that was telling her to kill her kids and that she had to kill her kids. So the burden is on the prosecution. As you notice in this rebuttal case, they're not calling the doctors that tended to her. Instead, they're calling their own experts to dispute what was put forth by the defense, by their experts. And one of those experts, notably, is the same doctor or expert that testified in the Andrea Yates trial in Texas. Remember, Andrea Yates is the same woman that killed her 5 kids by drowning each one of them. And she also claimed that she was suffering postpartum psychosis when she did.
Right. Now, lastly, the trial in Vegas, Dwayne "Keefe D. Davis, the one on trial for the murder of Tupac Shakur, he's pleaded not guilty. He's still maintaining that he was not in Las Vegas at the time of the killing of Tupac Shakur. So how's the prosecution picking apart this defense right now?
Well, as of now, we heard the first week of testimony, and that first week of testimony was very damning in a sense. So far, the prosecution has been able to solidify, number one, that Keefe D was part of the Crips gang, that he was a head honcho of the Crips gang. Number two, that he is the uncle of Orlando Anderson. Remember, Orlando Anderson is supposed to be the shooter. Number three, that there was a big fight that day in terms of Suge Knight and Tupac, who beat down Orlando Anderson, so hence providing motive to go after Tupac. And then number four, also this week, that we heard about that proffer agreement where Keefe D. Davis sat down with law enforcement in 2008 and 2009, and he believed he wouldn't be prosecuted, and he gave all this information up as to why Tupac was killed, what led to Tupac's death, that he was in that vehicle, that he procured that firearm that was used ultimately to kill Tupac, and what happened afterwards. So we're still in the very beginning of things, because remember, Keefe D. Davis gave a whole lot of statements,
right,
and the prosecution is definitely going to seek to put each of those statements in to show, number one, of course, he was involved, he was actively involved, and he was in Las Vegas, and that ultimately he orchestrated this killing of Tupac, and he should be held responsible.
Right. Got like 20 seconds here. What are you looking forward to this week?
I want to see when they're going to call Detective Greg Kading, because remember, this detective is the one who ultimately was investigating the death of Biggie Smalls, and that's how we got to Keefe D. Davis. So I want to hear his testimony, because he did do that documentary and wrote that book having to do with murder rap that gave us insight to it.
All right, we will. Bernarda Villalona, we'll do this week. I'm looking forward to it.
Burden of proof.
Let's go. You heard it. And for more on those cases, check out our show, Burden of Proof, right here on ABC News Live every weekday at 5:30 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And you can also watch it on demand on Disney Plus, Hulu, or wherever you listen to podcasts by searching Burden of Proof.